The Treasury Department is expected to outline plans for delaying tax filing and payments without penalties beyond April 15th, which is something that should definitely happen if you if you want to have a country that is really sustainable. Like if you want to have a economy anymore, I feel like you got to really focus on delaying those taxes because there are no customers. There's no base of support for anything right now. There really just isn't. And I think the most obvious thing is you got to get rid of the expenses that people have to pay because we're not living in normal times. Like this stuff needs to be put in place. And we see people doing it all across the world. And it's time that we got to think about doing that here. The financial obligations, especially for the small-scale industry, small-scale businesses, they need to be alleviated if we want to continue to have an economy. I just think that's obvious at this point. It really is. So we also today are continuing to see tightening restrictions as more than 7 million residents in the San Francisco Bay Area have been ordered to mostly confine themselves in their homes, joining the ranks of Italy, Spain, France, and China. It's bad. President Trump conceded. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Prez. Really appreciate that. And yeah, so financial markets tanked, and the economists warned of a steep recession that might already be underway. We are at war, President Emmanuel Macron of France told his people. The enemy is invisible and insidious, gathering strength from the bonds of human connection. So yeah, it's really deep. It's crazy stuff. It's really crazy stuff. So public health officials were asking the people the world over to sever those ties. We are so interconnected. It's a crazy thing. And it's very, very hard for us to do. While nations, states, and localities offer different restrictions with varying degrees of enforcement, the message was coalescing around a simple, if daunting, challenge. Keep your distance. Do the best that you can. So in the United States, the Trump administration warned against gatherings of more than 10 people and asked citizens to work from home if possible and avoid unnecessary travel. Bars and restaurants should be avoided or closed in areas where the virus was rapidly spreading, officials said. So, yeah, like life, like you thought it was bad a few days ago. You thought life was getting crazy a few days ago. Well, it is really getting crazy now. It's probably going to get crazier. We are looking at, if things continue to pan out the way they are panning out, we're looking at a lockdown situation. I think there's no doubt about that. We could see something where it's going to be very, very hard to leave the house and actually get out and go do something while this virus continues to spread. So that is the situation. It could be for quite a while. The guidelines apply for the next 15 days, but President Trump warned that restrictions could go more stringent and last well into the summer. While the rate of infections have declined steeply in China, for instance, many of the harsh limits on movement there are still in place after more than 6 weeks. So the stepped-up action in the United States was driven in part by a report compiled by British researchers warning that 2.2 million people died in the country in the absence of strong action by government officials and individuals to slow the spread of the virus. New Jersey residents have been asked not to leave their homes from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. Curfew is being considered for New York City as well. In Italy, the scale of the epidemic is evident in the bodies left behind. In the oldest population in Europe, the country has suffered more than 2,100 deaths. Hospitals and morgues are inundated. Very, very sad situation because people like this is the reality of the situation. People are dying, and people are potentially 1 million plus people. Worst case scenario, could die if we don't get this under control. This is a very, very serious situation. I think it's really impossible at this point because we've never seen anything like it. It's so hard to properly wrap our minds around what we're seeing unfold here. So, yeah, the European Union proposed a 30-day shutdown of non-essential travel into the bloc from other countries, an urgent attempt to keep internal borders as open as possible to promote European solidarity. But on Tuesday, nations within the bloc continue to close themselves off from their neighbors. I think that's just what we got to do at this point because it is really tough to continue to make the case, right, for these borders to remain open, at least for the time being. And yeah, I mean, the really crazy thing is like, it's even like the world is shutting down. Literally, the world is shutting down. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We don't even know how long it's going to last, how bad it's going to be. we are entering just crazy times here. So, crazy to say the least. So after yet another devastating day on Wall Street on Monday, Asian markets stabilized on Tuesday, but fears that the crisis could lead to recession grew. The price of oil fell from $30 a barrel, its lowest level in 4 years. So oil, getting incredibly cheap because there is just, it's really tough to say. It's really tough to say what could happen now. Because the weird thing is, it used to be that originally the Patriots would feel, or not the Patriots. I'm thinking about Tom Brady, who, in case you are a sports fan, I'm recording just about the time as we find out that Tom Brady has announced that he's going to be leaving the Patriots organization, which is huge for any sports fans. But it's because originally China we're thinking about China. They didn't have the ability to produce this stuff. They didn't have the ability to hold up their end of the kind of supply chain. Now we are not going to be able to receive it because we're not going to be able to have any customers with the ability to leave their house to go buy this stuff, even as China begins to slowly get back up on its feet. Around the world, around 180,000 cases have been reported. More than 7,000 people have died, but more than 800,000 people have recovered. So that is the positive thing there. U.S. futures on Tuesday. Right now, let's take a look at the Dow here, and just type it in, see how we are doing. We are up 16.25 points by 0.08%. So, and falling somewhat below. Since the beginning of the 9:30, we had a pretty big drop. And then we're now kind of leveling out and currently going up by about 0.8%. So that is the reality of the situation here. We're seeing just massive drops literally every other day at this point, and followed by periods of just like small stabilization. So, we're going to keep you updated on this throughout the point of the show. And you pull back to like the 6 months perspective here, and it's really palpable, the immense drop. Like we started this 6 month period at around 27,000. We are now down at 20,000 for the Dow Jones, and it's not the biggest and most important economic indicator in the world, obviously, but it is quite compelling that we have continued to see such a crazy and incredible thing. As we pass now 20,000 and just the incredible drop that we have seen. So, European markets, on the other hand, they were mostly lower as investors tried to grapple with a disastrous Monday on Wall Street. So, pretty much the way it works is just Wall Street continuing to respond to, or people just really responding to what we do, because we are really slowly becoming the epicenter of this this crisis. That is the crazy thing. Let's take a look at the S&P, which normally follows the Dow Jones here. They're up by 1.25% today, with 505 constituencies, which is a little more, but the Dow Jones is generally considered to be the standard indicator. So that is the very interesting and very much now live unfolding picture of what is happening. So the sell-off began after the Federal Reserve took extraordinary steps on Sunday to shut down to support the American economy as businesses shut down and borders were closed in an effort to contain this virus. Investors saw the move as more evidence of just how bad things were and reacted. Accordingly, the yield on the 10-year Treasury bond rose to about 0.8%, which could suggest investors were warming to the idea of putting their money in riskier assets like stocks. Once again, energy prices, which slid sharply on Monday, staged a very modest comeback on Tuesday. West Texas Intermediate, the American benchmark, was up 1.9% to about 29.25 barrel. Investors across Asia were more cautious. Tuesday about the state of global finance. Japan's Nikkei 225 index finished the day just above zero. In mainland China, Shanghai's composite index was down 0.3%. So, that is the big kind of global roundup. As now, let's take a look at how the White House is handling infighting, turf wars, and a president more concerned with the stock market and media coverage than policy have defined the Trump White House. It's also defined really how it's handled this pandemic, as the White House culture that President Trump has fostered for more than 3 years has helped shape his administration's response to a deadly pandemic that's upending his presidency and the rest of the country. It all explains how Trump could announce he was dismissing his acting chief of staff as the crisis grew more severe, creating even less clarity in an already fractured chain of command. That's what I think a lot of people, this dude literally dismissed his chief of staff while this was all going on. And it was a major factor in the president's reluctance to even acknowledge the looming crisis for fear of rattling the financial markets that serve so much as his political weather vane. Because the biggest thing is he's got that good economy and he's got all those strong financial indicators. And it's going to be very, very important to see how he handles this crisis. And if somehow, due to like a massive turnaround based on the way things are looking now, if he somehow is able to figure out handling this well, it could be a very, very helpful thing for him. But, hey, you don't know. Trump has refused repeated, miracles could happen, I guess. It all explains how this could happen, as Trump has refused repeated warnings to rely on experts or to neutralize some of the power held by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, in favor of more traditional staff structure. He has rarely fully empowered the people in the jobs that they hold to really do the things that they want. That's the big prevailing complaint among at least Trump's rank and file staff members. Part of this president is President Trump being Donald J. Trump, the same guy he's always been. And part of it is a government he has now molded in his image, rather than having a government as it's traditionally been to serve the chief executive and to serve the job of governing this country. Said David LaPan, a former spokesman for the Department of Homeland Security and Pentagon, and former aide to one of Trump's previous chiefs of staff, John Kelly. That's going to be very, very interesting stuff. So, we don't know how he's going to handle it, and we can only really wait and see. So I do want to get a little bit more into this social distancing there, as all reporting there that you've heard so far has come from the New York Times coronavirus coverage. But an alarming scientific report compiled by British researchers and shared with the Trump White House warns that in the absence of drastic and coordinated government action, the novel coronavirus could kill as many as 2.2 million people in the United States alone. The new research, led by epidemiologist Dr. Neil Ferguson and published on Monday by the Imperial College of London, shows that the merely acting to slow rather than completely stopping the spread of COVID-19 would still likely result in hundreds of thousands of deaths in health systems, more notably intensive care units being overwhelmed many times over. For a country who are able to achieve it, this leaves suppression as the preferred policy option. In the UK and US context, suppression will minimally require a combination of social distancing of the entire population, home isolation of cases, and household quarantine of family members. This may need to be supplemented by school and university closures, which we're already seeing. Successful suppression of the virus could, as the researchers noted, potentially take 18 months or more. And I really think, because the American people are really, in some cases, trying to understand how bad this is going to be and really trying to grapple with it, and are starting to realize that this could be very, very bad and very, very serious. But even even the most freaked out people or I know, they may not be freaking out enough based on this possibility. The fact that 2.2 million people could die if we don't take the most drastic measures possible is really what they're saying here. The New York Times reported late Monday the researchers' terrifying projection of as many as 2.2 million possible deaths in the U.S. Just the U.S. alone was shared with the White House task force last week, when President Trump was still downplaying the threat posed by the COVID-19 outbreak. "We don't have a clear exit strategy," Ferguson told the Times. "We're going to have to suppress this virus, frankly, indefinitely until we have a vaccine. It's a difficult position for the world to be in, and they need to make a vaccine very, very fast." The team of researchers also shared its fatality estimates with the CDC, according to the Times, including that 8 to 9% of the people in the most vulnerable age group, 80 or older could die if infected. During a press conference on Monday, Trump falsely claimed that no one ever thought coronavirus was a threat a month ago. This is a bad one, said Trump.